For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, we are live and amplified. So let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome back to another live and amplified livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are still here at In a Jam down by the river at the amazing Mountain Breeze Campgrounds. And we have Ryan Glenn with us. How's it going today, man?
Doing good, brother. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. You know, it's Thursday, and I've been drinking for a while, so I guess I couldn't feel any better.
No, I reckon not so.
So excited to have you on. Are you from Denton, like born and raised, or is that just where you're at now?
I've lived in the Denton area since I was about 1 or 2 years old, so
gotcha.
Pretty much my whole life.
But born and raised Texas?
Yes, sir.
Cool.
I've lived in the Metroplex since I was born. I was born in Richardson.
Cool. It's one of those things where it's like sometimes it's just easier to say Dallas because people know, but yeah. So what was it like growing up in the Metroplex for you and in Denton?
You know, I feel really blessed. I was really lucky. Both of my parents and then my grandparents are all full-time musicians, so I get to grow up being in the music scene, here in DFW, or out in DFW where I'm from. And I've always heard, about Green, about New Braunfels, and about all the cool stuff that happens down this way. So every time I get to come down here, it's always just so cool. It's just man, this is legendary.
Right.
I feel like I'm walking around in a superhero movie.
Yeah. How often do you get to come down this way?
I've tried to come down here once every 4 months, just about once every quarter. So.
Sick. And so where are you kind of at musically right now? Are you working on stuff or?
I have one full-length record that I released a few years ago, right after the pandemic. It was in 2021, and I'm working on another full-length record right now. I just released my first single off of it. It's a tune called Luke the Drifter, and we're about to release our second one, a tune called Piper.
Nice. And what's that process been like, just going through the recording? Are you recording is everything for the album already recorded and ready to go, or where are you kind of at there?
I'm doing it a song at a time.
Okay.
I'm an audio engineer myself and a producer, and I work with a guy named Tim Lightyear. He used to play for Shane Smith and the Saints, and he's been all over the country. But he's a fantastic producer, and I've been working as his assistant engineer. And one day I was just like, "Hey man, why don't we record some of my stuff?" And he was like, "Hell yeah, man, why don't we?" So it's been.
Why haven't we already?
Really, yeah. Okay. It's been really, really cool. So.
Nice. And so, being an engineer, it's always kind of interesting to talk to musicians that are also engineers that kind of know both sides. Do you find it harder to work on your own if you have to record your own music, do you find it harder to do that, or do you prefer working on your own music, as far as recording and stuff?
I cannot keep my hands off the keyboard to save my life. It doesn't matter what's going on. I'll be like, Tim, switch me out. I got an idea. Switch me out. So I've engineered about half the record myself, but it was so funny because the first day that I went in to record, I was like, don't let me engineer any of it because then I won't stop. Just you be the producer and I want to be the artist. And then 5 minutes in, I was like, hey, can I try messing around with that drum sound? I hear something.
Yeah.
And I have not been able to get away from the computer long enough to be the artist since.
It's one of those things where you tell somebody, hey, if I start trying to take over, be a hard ass, tell me no, or fuck you, or something like that. And then it's you have that personal relationship, and it's I don't want to tell them to no, so it's always a weird balance. So kind of going into this process of recording and releasing music, do you know already what songs are going to get released, or are you still kind of playing it one song at a time in that aspect?
So I have a sheet of paper that has kind of an idea that I keep going back to, but I swear every time I look at it, the ideas change from what the sheet of paper says. So it's all been just kind of, really what makes sense. What do I feel like I'm being led to do, by whatever the great thing is that, helps us do whatever we're trying to do. I've just been kind of going by what I feel like makes sense, and hoping that it's the right thing, it's all I can do.
It's one of those things where you set out with a grand vision, and then because probably finances, you can't afford to record a full album. As you go through the process of recording and releasing, it's I was looking at this next song, but not really feeling it anymore. You know,
100%.
So just kind of, I think that the fact that you have that fluidity where it's like, okay, I was feeling this at one point, but I'm not feeling it anymore. Let's look at a different song is really cool.
Well, and it's definitely happened that way. Like, I have a song that's totally recorded, totally ready to be mixed and ready to go. I mean, all I have to do is just send it to the guy to mix it, and then it'll be ready for release.
Yeah.
And it was one of the very first songs I tracked for this project, and now I'm looking at it being the very last single that I do before the actual album releases. So it's been, it's been an adventure, but I love it. I love making records. I love making music, and it's cool getting to do the two things I love, writing and singing and recording and producing, so.
You're going to sit on that song, and chances are you'll probably be like, yeah, well, let's find something else to put in the song's place.
It's very likely. It's really likely.
It's one of those things where it's like, I'm a firm believer, if you don't like it here, you're not going to like it here. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, not saying that it will happen, but it'd be very likely that will happen where it's like...
For sure.
Yeah. And not to say that you won't ever record it, because, it's always possible, but...
More than anything, I just want to make a good record. I want to make a piece of art, and that's... Like I said, I'm just doing it the way it feels natural to until it doesn't feel that way anymore, and then I'll abandon ship then,
For sure. So as you're kind of working on everything for this project, who are you listening to right now? Who's kind of got your ear as far as like influences and whatnot?
Oh, I listen to just about everything. I love old country tunes, and I mean like Hank Williams, and. Yeah. I love a lot of old rockabilly stuff. Elvis, Johnny Cash, Eddie Cochran, they're some of my biggest heroes. But I like a lot of jazz, like Hank Garland, and I like a lot of contemporary stuff too. And I do listen to the radio a lot. And I'm very lucky because the place I'm in geographically, Denton's like a huge jazz hub. All the jazz guys hang out in Denton, and all the fusion funk guys.
Yeah.
But then you go to Fort Worth, and all the honky-tonk guys are out there, and all the old-school country guys. And then you go out to Dallas, and it's all within 45 minutes of me, And in Dallas, all the contemporary guys that are writing really cool, complex arrangement stuff, they're all playing on just their acoustics, doing this insane stuff, So I've been very blessed to be surrounded by so much music my whole life that more than anything, I really hope that it will reflect in the tunes that I'm writing and working on right now.
Yeah. So being around music your entire life, especially in Denton and in the Metroplex, like you were talking, that has, so many different influences from jazz, blues, rock, country, you got the stories of Deep Ellum and their blues and rock and all that stuff. When you were first kind of playing around with the idea of becoming a musician, or who introduced you to music? Was it just because it was kind of always there? Were your parents musical? Who kind of introduced you to music?
Well, like I said, I've always been around it, but as far as being introduced to like the stuff that I really love, it's funny because when I very, very first started, I was doing mostly like the rockabilly 50s Elvis-y thing, and I never grew up listening to that stuff. My parents didn't like it. My grandparents didn't even really care for it. My grandparents played in country bands, so they're all into the old school country guys. But I used to go thrift shopping a lot with my grandma, my nano. And one time we were at a thrift store, and I saw this little cassette tape with a big old picture of Elvis's face on it, and I was like, man, I don't know what's leading me to feel this way, but I have to buy that cassette tape. And I didn't even have a cassette tape player. I was lucky that she had one in her car, but that little 99-cent cassette tape, it changed my life. It's the whole reason that I got into music, and I got into that kind of music, and then one thing led to another, and I went and saw 2 Tons of Steel, and I was always very much so the person that would like run up to somebody and be like, hey, I'm your biggest fan, and so Kevin from that band has been a huge mentor to me. He's been very, 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 very generous and helped me a lot with trying to get my footing and get started. So I've been very great. I'm very grateful. I feel very blessed. I've had so many different, like I said, influences in the music scene, but also just influences in the people that I've gotten to know, the experiences that I've been exposed to, to lead me to where I am right now. And hopefully much farther than where I am right now. I always want to get better. That's the goal.
Yeah. I love that story of just going and being drawn to a piece of music, whether it was cassettes, vinyl, like whatever it was. And obviously going into like a thrift shop or whatever it was, it probably would be a cassette, and just taking that chance. Obviously a 99-cent chance ain't that big of a chance, and buying it, listening to it, and that's just how things are. I remember when I was a kid, my mother bought me a boombox, like not one of those big ghetto blaster deals, but like a little boombox that I could put like cassettes in. And I went to the store with her, And I remember my buddy's dad talking about Three Dogs Down. I think it was the name of the band, or some. I don't remember what they're called down. I was looking through and I was like, oh, they have a best of album or like a cassette, and I was like, I'm gonna buy that. And then there's a couple other things that I picked up, and that's how the journey begins, you know, just taking those chances.
For sure.
And stupid simplicity, I guess, would be the best way to kind of word it.
Right.
So.
Well, there's been a lot of instances where I haven't had to look out for good music and for good friends, you know, they found me, and it's really cool, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like there is just something very magical about, like you said, being drawn to something, about feeling like, you know, I don't know what it is, but I'm supposed to have this, or I'm supposed to listen to this, or I'm supposed to be a part of this, you know?
Yeah, for sure. It's sometimes, and I guess that kind of goes back to the thing of music just being very instinctual and just kind of going with something. I don't know what this is, but something about it's drawing it to me, and that's really cool. So we're sitting in a jam right now. You just got off stage, right? How was your set tonight?
We had a great time. This is such a cool festival. I'm so proud. Dustin Brown's one of my very, very good friends, and I'm so proud of what he's put together here. You know, I know how much. Well, I don't know, but I can only imagine how many hours and how much sweat, blood, and tears, you know, he put into making this happen, and I could not be prouder of him than I am. You know, it's so cool.
Yeah. Is this your first year, or how many times have you come here?
It's my first year here. He's invited me a few times, but every time I've been like, oh man, I have something I'm doing and I really can't reschedule it. It's like a really big thing, or oh man, somebody's getting married. It's just never worked out. But this year when he reached out, I was like, hell yeah, man, sign me up, I'll be there.
There's always that time where it's never convenient, but it's like you really want to go, but that's wild. And then just kind of looking forward, how often are you playing shows after, like, how often do you usually play shows?
Well, I'll be playing 2 more dates down here this weekend while I'm here, but I tend to play every weekend, you know, a lot of acoustic stuff, but then a lot of full band stuff, and then I try to stay busy during the weeks, and anytime I'm not doing that, it's because I'm in the studio working on other people's tunes. So
and how often would you say you're in the studio? Like, is that
weekly? It's kind of like the closest I have to a full-time job right now, you know.
that was going to be my next question, is if you had a full-time supply or a job to kind of supply the financial means to be a musician.
Mostly just the studio stuff, and then live stuff. I'm also very blessed in the sense that my dad owns a construction company, and whenever I'm like, man, I really am strapped for some cash, he also plays in my band, and I'll be like, hey, can I come help out for a week? You know.
Hey, it's good that you'll like go help instead of being like, hey, can you spot me? Yeah, right. So the fact that you have that option to just kind of go, and that really works for the music scene. Like, you don't have to hold down. I'm sure it's nerve-wracking at times where it's like, oh shit, I don't know where my next paycheck's coming from, but we're gonna make it work. We're gonna do this. We're in it together, type of thing. Mm-hmm. So, cool. And then just kind of moving forward, if anybody wants to check out your music or check out shows or just interact with you on social, where's the best place to do that?
You can find a link tree to all of my links on my Instagram and Facebook. That's at Ryan Glenn Official, RyanGlenn Official. And then from there, I'm on Spotify, iTunes, Pandora, anywhere where you can listen to music, legally or illegally. I'm probably there.
Fair. You know, it's one of those things where with like the rise of independent music right now, a site like not Pandora, but like Napster or Bearshare or FrostWire, like for musicians that are just trying to get their music out, right now would be a good time for a site like that, where it's like, hey, disguise my song as insert this famous song, you know, because I remember doing that all the time, where I'd go like find one song and then it would be a completely different song, and then that became like my favorite song ever. So. Oh,
really? That's cool.
It's just one of those things where you just gotta hack the system a little bit. You know? So, awesome. And then just because I've asked everybody that comes on the show, what is the most obscure cover song that you've been asked to play at a show?
Oh man. I got asked to play. There's a lot that I know I've been asked that I haven't heard of, but I don't remember. But one of the ones that I did know was an old Rockabilly song. The Clash might have covered it, and it goes, I don't remember what it's called, but it's, my baby drove up in a brand new Cadillac.
Nice.
Yes, she did.
Yeah.
You know, it's an old like Sun Records tune.
Yeah.
So, and I love that stuff. So it's always cool when somebody else knows that stuff, you know,
Yeah.
and
You have a passion, but nobody really knows that passion, and when it kind of just comes out naturally, that's always really cool.
yeah, for sure, 100%. Well, and it's funny because then people think they know, and then they're like, "Can you do Tennessee whiskey?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can do Tennessee whiskey, but that's not really
The same thing. Completely different. It's like you just went from being really cool to, oh shit, okay. Dang it. But anyways, really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat, and hopefully we'll get you back on as the full project kind of is released, and once you kind of or if you get closer to like that final song, whatever it is, love to have you back on and kind of dive in deeper on that. But until then, thank you so much, and we will talk to y'all later.